Okay, well, we're rolling.
Cool.
Foster, thank you for being here.
My great pleasure, Tim.
I'm going to coin you the godfather of leadership.
I saw that I saw that in one of the emails you sent me, and I went, "Oh my God, Godfather! Wow."
Yeah. So I'm just going to start there. I've recently had some other people on that are doing different things in leadership. And I'm so very excited to sit with you just because I always respect and admire your wisdom and your perspective.
Way too kind. I
Yeah.
sure enjoyed talking with you.
And how long have you been in this leadership coaching consulting? How do you, let's start there. How do you phrase what you do?
Yeah. I'll give you the bio piece. I am founder and chairman emeritus of FMG Leading, which is a human capital advisory firm serving mostly healthcare clients. So we work with leaders and companies to try and improve their health and performance in healthcare, which is so needed these days. Started that in 1984, was a consultant prior to that, but didn't really do any coaching. Really started really started doing this kind of coaching stuff in late 80s, early 90s, when we would work with an organization as a firm to try and improve something about their people, whether it's culture or communications or leadership management, and realize that everything went through the leaders. There was no initiative that we could ever envision and co-create with a client that didn't really affect or wasn't dramatically affected by their leadership, usually at the top. So in my work with organizations, I started working almost exclusively with CEOs. And so that was probably the late 80s. Although, again, I started way before that, but I really started working on this coaching thing late 80s, early 90s.
And you've got a fairly sizable team now from when it was just you.
Yeah, there are probably about 50 or 60 of us spread out across the country. I have two wonderful partners. One is our CEO and chairman, who has taken over that role for me. And then one is our chief strategy officer, and they both allow me great freedom to do what I do. I've moved from leading the firm back into coaching executives,
Okay.
which is what I really wanted to do when after we got the firm to a certain point, I realized I wasn't the leader for the next the next generation. So turned it over to my partner Matt. We had been together for 10 years at that point, and yeah, we're both better off for it.
Remind me to ask you about that because I want to ask you a little bit more about. So when you guys go in, because you said this team is 50 to 60, you're working with the CEO. Is it you one on one? Is anyone else working with that CEO or company, with management, or is it just you or whoever this person is with the CEO at the top? Hi, folks. Quick note from me. If you don't already know, the goal of Mountain Mule Media is to build real connection between Montana's businesses and the people they serve. If this episode or any other has given you something worth thinking about, smiling at, or passing along, I've got a small ask. Share it with a friend, text it to someone, post it in your story. That one simple action helps these businesses get seen, grow, and thrive, and it helps this show keep going. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses. Now back to the show.
Every iteration and permutation possible. So sometimes it's just, and I'll give some examples, but sometimes it's just me working with the CEO. Other times it is me working with the CEO and sometimes with their executive team. And there have been many organizations that have me and our entire team come and coach their entire executive team. That happens a lot in more startup kind of. We do a lot in biopharma, biotech, startup things, and they're fairly new companies, and they've got leaders that are technically very sound, but haven't always grown and scaled an organization. They don't have that experience. So they'll have us coach every one of the members of their executive team. And then either I or other members of the team we call it, team formation at the executive level. We get them aligned on strategy, their own behaviors, how they're going to lead, how they're going to collaborate, goals, all that kind of stuff. And then that opens up a lot of other organizational needs. So sometimes it's just coaching the CEO. Many times it's, lots more many more engagements in the organization.
What typically is it that's the pinch point that's bringing you guys in there that they're looking for?
It's a great question. We often talk about what's the pain the organization is feeling. Many times it is either uncertainty or confidence on the part of the CEO that he or she can scale that business. So I'll give you two examples. One is, and they're both in the startup area. One, we started with 4 or 5 years ago, and they had created, or they're in the process of trying to find a medication for a particular eye disease that affects a very large percentage of people 65 and over who have had cataract surgery.
Okay.
And there's this disease called blepharitis that half the people that have those surgeries get. They did their research and discovered that it is a mite, actually, as gross as that may sound, that causes this disease. And they work to find the right kind of pharmaceutical treatment. So I got them even before I started working with them, even before they were through their clinical trials. It was very, very early stage. Within the first year, the interest in their product was so high that they were encouraged to go public. So this little tiny company with 15 or 20 people was now a publicly traded company. So the CEO, who was brilliant, he still is brilliant, Rhodes Scholar, research PhD, Harvard MD, all that stuff, had never run and grown a business before. And so I got connected with him to help him kind of figure out what he was going to do as CEO, how he was going to lead. And then part of that, everything that I do, as you can tell from my book too, it's all about how am I leading myself? How am I showing up? How I define leadership as building capacity of self and others to create breakthrough results. Like I can manage some good results a year or two, but for me to sustainably grow a business or to expand performance, it really requires an awful lot of self-awareness. I need to know how I behave and the impact on others that creates, because the primary job of a leader is to create aligned, committed, passionate followers. Without that followership, we have nothing. And so work with him to how are you going to show up and what are you going to do? And worked with him a lot on his self-awareness and a lot of feedback and a lot of kind of deep coaching stuff. And then he brought our team in to coach everybody on his team. Today they are selling that product commercially. They're $500 million in sales in just a very short period of time. And now they're a commercial organization as opposed to a research organization.
Okay.
So how do you handle all that culture change that comes along with, we're not just hunting and finding and proving, now we're selling. And how do we keep the back end engine going? So it's a very much more complicated organization. It's fun. So that's where we get involved.
Do you have a definition for what leading yourself is? You might have just given it.
Well, that's a good nuance there. I think I would say when leading self means that I have cleared away all of my the impediments that hold me back from the truest and highest expression of who I am and what my vision is. And most of the time, we are not lacking anything. We are holding back our full performance. Whether it's a fear, it's a belief, it's a mindset, it's a habit, but lots of things hold us back from the best expression of who we really are, what we're committed to, what we're passionate about. And so a lot of coaching is clearing away those obstacles.
Yeah, I guess as in your words, clearing the stream.
Clearing the stream. Yeah, I like that metaphor a lot. It seems to resonate with people, seems to resonate with people a lot. Is our stream clear and free flowing? Have we put, or does there exist any impediments in that free flow of water? Because we've all experienced it, springtime runoff, and you see this water cascading down in a draw, and its force is full and you don't have to do anything. It's there and strong. And most of the time, when I think about leaders and all the stuff they experience every day, that's the subject of my latest book. That stream isn't flowing like that anymore. There have been a lot of things put in the way. And so my job is to help them kind of recreate that free flowing stream.
Is it pretty subjective to the individual as far as what they can do to clear that stream? Is it, or is
Yeah.
there something that sticks out that seems to be tried and true?
It's always different. Think about this too. And you were talking about your sister and you grew up in the same house and you're entrepreneurial and she is more security oriented. How do we develop the beliefs in life about what life is and how we need to play in it? It's all very, very subjective and very different. So we try and meet. I'll speak to me. I try and meet people where they are, and we go from there.
Yeah, I've had to bounce off of that with my sister. I've had conversations with my brother. He's 4 years younger than me. You would think we grew up in different countries,
It's so funny.
and it's just perspective is the amount of nuances between who we are as individuals and our genetic makeup and our experience just with a 4 year difference is it seems to be day and night.
My older brother, who passed a few years ago, he and I were both adopted. We were the first children to our birth parents, adopted by our real parents and our adoptive parents. And he was 3.5 years older. Well, I said that incorrectly. I was the firstborn to mine. I don't know where he was in the birth order of his birth mother, but we were same kind of thing, night and day different. How we looked, how we thought, what we did, how we achieved, how we studied. One was athletic, one was not. One was more introverted and bookish than like could not have been more different.
It's funny, and my brother David, I'd say the exact same thing.
Mm.
The way we look, everything, and then on a funnier note too, I see the similarities at a depth. Some things with our personalities, there's actually there we're so different, but I do see. I'm like, okay, I do kind of I get it. We're totally different, but I do see sort of some of the core that's
Yeah.
similar.
As part of my developmental journey, it took me years and years and years to accept and not judge those differences. I think that created um, really an artificial barrier between he and I. Like, why can't he just? And how come he's always in this kind of predicament? And why do I need to be the one to bail him out or whatever it was?
Mhm.
And only when I was able to suspend that judgment of him, accept him, I think better for who he was, did we have a relationship.
Yeah, yeah, I can completely relate, and I'm still on that journey. But we butted heads like crazy when we were younger, as like brothers
Mm.
do, and we were just both going in the opposite direction. And with a little bit more life experience and wisdom, I've just realized that hey, everyone's everyone's different for very justified reasons. I think that the phrase or quote I've heard is with enough information, everything is justified and makes sense to that individual.
Yeah.
And I'm just lacking a lot of information of the context of his experience.
Yeah. Um, Coming from that place, it makes it a lot easier to relate to human beings. We're all going through our own struggles. And I have to assume that my brother was not mentally ill. I know he was not mentally ill. So if he's not mentally ill, he's making decisions that make sense to him rationally. They don't make sense to me rationally. That's not the screen. So if they make sense to him rationally, then my approach to him needs to be discovery as opposed to judgment. Like, what is it that has you believe that? Because I'd really like to know, not that I want to change. And by the way, I don't know if we'll get back to this, but it's also an approach that works in a divided society these days politically. Like, what is it that has you believe what you believe? And I found kind of great purchase in that question and that line of thinking.
That's what this podcast has been immensely helpful for is
Mm.
just getting to understand people better. And I think I've just gotten better at talking to people and better at asking questions in the process. And asking the questions that can cultivate a deeper connection right away. And then I see the similarities in so many people that, you know, not the same gender, look nothing alike, totally different age,
Yep.
totally different background. But I don't know, you just start to get this, yeah, I get it. I get you. And then that's a much deeper connection than,
Yep.
hey, we both voted for the same person and we both have beards and,
Right.
we both go hunting and
Right.
that's great too. Cool. And
Yeah.
some of your friends probably will do that. And yeah, but I have the weirdest group of friends. I don't know I don't know what they'd all be like around a table, but it could be interesting.
Cool.
But yeah,
That's fun.
yeah. But I get that there's so much nuance into. So back to that CEO or what you guys
Yep.
do. What's the biggest similarity in them? I'd imagine one of the biggest things is the humility to ask for help and guidance that helps them continue to be a leader or at least have the ability to become a better leader.
That's kind of advanced leadership 401. When we're young and newly in a job, and I'll equate the two, but for now, when we're young and newly in a job, we're out really desperately trying to prove ourselves. And the spotlight is on us. We feel great fear if we let anybody down or don't achieve quarterly results. As people grow and mature, there's less of the spotlight on them. They realize that. And so this notion of having enough humility and vulnerability to be able to ask for feedback, to ask for ideas is really an advanced skill. And I see some of the best leaders do that, but not all leaders do that.
Okay.
And I would tell you that's a cheat code.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get better as a leader and attract your followers better? Ask them how. They'll tell you. They see you. So, what am I doing that's working? How could I meet your needs more directly? What am I not seeing? What am I blind to based on my behaviors and prejudices? Help me understand. And that phrase, help me understand, is one of the cheat codes for me of leading.
Hey folks, Tim here with Mountain Mule. I've got an exciting announcement that 2026, this spring and summer, we are going to start offering park tours through Yellowstone National Park. We're excited to add this to the options of things that we offer. The tours are going to start and end in Bozeman tentatively, but we will expand those options and make them somewhat customizable to the greater Gallatin Valley area. And more of this will continue to develop as we build out the programs. Please visit mountain-mule.com and we'll keep all the updates there. We're excited to be able to offer this to the services that we provide. You said that's 401. Now I want to know what the other three are. Yesterday I was editing podcast that'll be released tomorrow, and it's with Amanda. She opened Sky Oro in Bozeman. I don't know if you know much about that place, but it's a women's co-working space.
Oh, cool.
And it's a venue that, it can be rented for various things. There's a few conference rooms.
Where is it, Tim?
It's in the Cannery District.
Okay, neat.
It's right near Shan.
Okay, yeah.
And my fiance works out of there quite a few days a week, speaks very highly of it. I'd been there for a few different events and met Amanda a few times, but she said now the place is no longer even about her anymore. It's about the people that are there and, who they become. And this is I'm totally paraphrasing, and it obviously speaks much more to women, but they can express themselves, be who they are.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to listen to her say that the place is no longer about her anymore. It's sort of transcended into, the people, the community of it. And I don't know if that's similar to what you're saying with leaders.
It is. And that's a success. If I am egotistical, if I am fear driven, whether I know it or not, I never allow myself in Leadership 101 or 201 to get to that point. That's why I just jokingly said it's 401. It's really advanced. When I can surrender this part of my identity that identifies with I am the CEO and I am the titular figurehead and all decisions come through me, which I don't ever think is a great thing, especially in today's complex society. But when I can surrender that and allow the talents of others Here's 201. Allow the talents of others to rise. 301 is to encourage and develop them to be brilliant. And then 401 is the humility to really open yourself up and all that. I don't know if that's the right order, but anyway.
I'm gonna look through your book and make sure. That it reminds me of, and we had talked about this kind of when I started this company, and I was very dead set on it being a fleet of luxury pickup trucks.
Yep.
It was so attached to my identity,
Yep.
Of who I was growing up and everything else, and it was literally a dam across my stream.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it was. I love to honor who I am and where I came from, but not at the expense of everything that the company needs to continue to exist.
And what had you see that?
I think enough time and hardship and asking enough people, the humility to ask, what am I missing? What am I missing? And then, I mean, maybe even a lot of conversations like this to talk to other people and just see that there's avenues available for myself and my business outside of just what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. Excellent. Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people will perish. You had a strong vision, but there's some things blocking your attainment of that vision based on previous paradigms, the way things need to look. And when you opened yourself up to that, look what's happening now.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I remember when we got the first SUV, I thought the world was going to end. And it was honestly like opening up a floodgate, like even just financially for the company, because there was so much opportunity. And then it just progressed from there.
Well, that's very cool.
But yeah, I didn't, like 2 weeks ago, I just sold my pickup truck.
Oh, you did?
I don't own a pickup truck right now.
No.
I've been joking that I'm going through an identity crisis.
Oh my God.
But
detoxing.
Yeah, but I just laugh because I see
that's great.
I see how big of a deal it was for me. And it was the economical decision to make, and it makes sense. And it makes sense for not just me, but everyone else in the company and my customers.
Neat. That's very cool.
When we go back to that CEO, which I'm still stuck on. You said this company went public in this process. Is there because I'd imagine when someone like that is hired to be a CEO, is there anything about those types of people because that's a massive transition if you go from a private to public company, and is there anything about those, is it character traits that, that put those people in those roles?
I hadn't thought about it just like that. I'll do a quick scan of the ones that I've known that have been most successful. They are smart. I list that one first. I maybe it shouldn't be first. These guys are just really smart. They are insatiable in terms of their willingness and need to learn stuff. What else? They are incredibly hardworking, so their work ethic is off the charts. And the ones that have been successful recognize that it's not just about them. In these startup roles, these CEOs come in, they're kind of icons. They're known in the eye care business. Boy, this guy, if you ever have a chance to work with this guy or invest with this guy, they're kind of iconic. So there's still part of that role when they need to attract investors that they still need to play. Shouldn't say play, but they still need to play that icon role, and that internally they need to build the talents of their team so that they don't overly defer to the icon. And that takes a while. Wait a minute, we're here because of you, remember? It goes, yeah, but you're very talented in and of yourself. So hardworking, intelligent, they have a good grasp of their technology. And then part of it too is they are always able to tell the story of what they're trying to create. Whether they're conscious of it or not, they're all real good at shaping narrative. Real good at it, because they have to do it internally and externally all the time. They have to make sense of stuff and then turn that into a cogent narrative for people. And I think those are the 4 things I think are common.
I'm going to selfishly ask you about internally.
Yeah.
How do you advise internally that they do that if they're not doing it already? Or how do they naturally do it already as far as shaping internal internal narrative?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of good technologies around this. What I'll say is, I'll point out a couple of things that I think are most common failures to do this. One of them is that the leader in him or herself doesn't push that narrative enough. The old common wisdom in organization life is that when you're creating a new product, it takes 7 exposures of a potential customer to that information before they recognize or they develop any brand ID or recognition, 7 times. And yet we'll create a new strategy and we'll say it once. Everybody gets it, right? Sure, until they don't. And they really don't. And so being a broken record about that narrative is one thing that people fail on most often because they get tired of sharing the message. And that's about that's the wrong standard. It is, do your people get it? Is it embraced in their kind of DNA? That's one thing. The second piece is it carried forward to all of your people processes? By that, I mean, is it carried into how you recruit for jobs? Is it carried into how you hire and onboard jobs? Is it carried into how you set goals for those jobs, how you appraise performance, how you promote? And then all the internal culture building stuff that a leader might do. That same narrative needs to come through everything. It's funny, an example this morning, I was asked to provide performance feedback, year-end performance feedback for 3 people on my team. And again, because I'm not in an operating position anymore, I'm always thrilled to give feedback. And the input form, to my great pleasure, was focused around the values of the company. It wasn't a bunch of just behavioral things. It was around grit. It was around perseverance. It was around client impact. And so the questions were really focused on our 3 core values. I went, this is great. Good stuff. So that's what I mean. Is that narrative baked into lots more stuff rather than just your words?
Yeah. This is the like the most minuscule example that probably doesn't even count, but for years and years, I'm always really aware of plastic, like drinking out of plastic, wasting plastic. And first, I'll be honest, like for the health reasons, hear all these things about the microplastic
Yep.
and everything.
Yep.
So, try to minimize using any plastic at all. And then, it's just a waste on top of it. And I'd been going on for so long about this, we'd have plastic water bottles in all of our vehicles. Yep. And I'm now like, it costs more money, but now we have all aluminum water bottles
that
we get from a company here locally. It's bottled in Montana. But I would say to myself, if I'm not, if I'm preaching this,
yep,
but then well, this will save us some money, so we can't do it there, then that's a terrible example of leadership in my opinion. But I think what you're saying, like all those little details.
Yep.
Because now it's what kind of air fresheners do we want to have in the cars? We don't want to have a bunch of chemicals in there. There's got to be some essential oils we can get that aren't.
Yep.
And it's all just those little things that I actually believe in. For my health, I can't preach those and then say, hey, well, this is a little bit more affordable, and we can't do this for all of our clients.
A friend reminded me recently the phrase "actions speak."
Mm-hmm.
That tells us what you're committed to.
Yeah. So backing up to what I wanted to ask you when we were starting, because you're not, you're the founder, but you're not the CEO now, and you're in a different role. How did you find that was where you needed to be, and how was that transition for you?
Yeah. I'll go to the end and then I'll rewind. Transition's been fabulous. Now, how did that occur? I looked for probably 10 years at the encouragement of a mentor of mine to find somebody to replace me. He called it a young foster. Go find a young foster. And I met my partner in school in our doctoral studies. And we found we had so many good common connections, a real strong values connection, strong vision and impact kind of connection, kind of how we wanted to be spending our professional careers. he came on as a subcontractor for a bit of time, and then brought him in full time because just to see how the business worked, and he was transitioning from something else. And when we crossed all of those kinds of things, and we've been together about 5 years, I started having direct conversations with him about succeeding me. Now, at this point, I didn't have any immediate plans to retire, but I did have great interest in making sure that the firm endured, right? So once I found out that he was interested in taking up that new role, each year for about 5 years, he would take on a new level of responsibility in the firm. So, for example, and I'm going to get off directionally, it's correct. Matt, year one, take over strategy. You own strategy for this business. So I want you to understand what our strategy is. I want you to think about some options. It means you need to get to know the marketplace that we're in, our competitors. You need to know all that stuff. That's year one. Year two, I want you to take over finance, and I want you to look at our systems and what we learn and what we know and what the gaps are and how we can improve it, all that kind of stuff. Year three, it's about operations. Year four. So for over 5 years, he took on a different kind of high level executive responsibility for the business. So by the end of that time, I remember that it was probably November 2016, something like that. And I was coaching a very high powered and ranking female executive at the large professional services firm, Deloitte. And the way it worked with her was she was too busy to talk to me during the weeks. But every 6 weeks, I would fly to meet her in Miami. We'd have dinner together. We'd have one night. We'd have breakfast together the next day, and we work until about 10 in the morning, and then I'd fly home. And it was a Friday afternoon. I'm flying home. I'm sitting in a window seat in the back of coach. I was just dog tired. And I got up the next morning on a Saturday morning, went, Matt, you ready? He goes, you going anywhere? I said, I'm not going anywhere. He goes, then I'm ready. So made that transition. It was such a natural, easy thing to do, but we prepped for it. Here's the other piece too that we don't often talk about, but you'll get this. We had both done our work. There's so many times founder transitions go badly because the founder is not prepared to surrender that part of their identity that's wrapped up in the title, wrapped up in their history, all that kind of stuff. And that was easier for me because I'd done some of that work, but it was still a tough transition. I mean, personally, I was a bit lost when internal phone calls for our management team went to extension 102 versus 101. Right? Wait, I'm not invited into this, or I'm optional. Like what? So there was still some work for me to do. But the fact is, I was super clear on what I wanted to create and what I wanted to have sustained. And so that helped an awful lot.
Yeah, that's cool. It's like I'm just thinking about it and I'm like, I can feel the nerves. I'm like, that's gotta be.
Oh man. Oh man. I heard, I'm listening, audible version of Obstacle is the Way, or Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday this morning. And he was talking about something similar. And he talked about how many leaders, I guess, older leaders have kind of a sense of ennui, a sense of boredom, or just not clear forward path. And I went, yeah, that's exactly what I felt for a number of years. Once I stepped down of that, and I wasn't really clear on how I could make my new contribution, because I was still committed to serving other people and helping make really healthy organizations. But I didn't need to do that through the vehicle of leading FMG leading anymore. And it was a transition. I mean, I'd been at it for 35 years in FMG by then. And so that was a bit of a transition, but yeah, nerves, frustrations, all of it. Yeah, all of it.
And you're happy for it now?
Thrilled now. It's funny. There's one side of me that resent's too strong a word, but maybe bristle or maybe just react to the fact that I'm not invited to certain meetings. There's the firm has shown me such great respect and such great care in making those meetings for me optional. Like, dude, you don't need to do this. You can come if you want, but we want to be respectful of your time. So that's what I've recognized in the kind of last 3, 4, 5 years. The degree of respect shown me has been just overwhelming.
And imagine a lot of that speaks to culture in the company you built in the beginning.
I think so. I hope it does.
Yeah, that's very cool. I want to ask you a little bit about your book.
Okay.
I'll tell you this because it's funny, because it was a couple, I don't know, it was a couple months ago we had met up maybe.
Yeah.
And prior I said, I'm going to blaze through the book. I'm just going to refresh my mind. I was asking you stuff about the business. So I essentially skipped the intro and just went into the book. So I read the whole book, and I did not I thought this was all actual events, the whole book.
I get that a lot.
And to not give away the whole book because it's such a cool concept. How did you come up with that format? Because to me, it's one of the most fascinating, and just the concept in itself is thought provoking, let alone the different analogies that it gives you and perspective, I think is invaluable for the way that it portrays or relays these messages.
Well, thank you for that. It's a real treat to hear that. The short answer is two things. Two factors led me to try and find a different way to communicate what had been true for me and what I worked with my executive coaching clients on for years. One was I wanted this to be relevant to more than just the CEOs that I worked with. There's an ego part of writing a book where you want to, I'll speak for me. There's an ego part of writing a book that I want to share with everybody how smart I am, how experienced I am, how knowledgeable I am, right? And there's that whole ego thing because you're going to put it out and it's going to last there forever, hopefully. I wanted to speak to a different audience. I wanted the mom who was taking their kids to a soccer match to really relate to it. I wanted the father who might be a stay-at-home father but is trying to organize some stuff in his neighborhood. I wanted it to be relevant to lots of people because my view is that we're all leaders in some fashion or form, whether it's family or community or business, didn't matter. You're still engaged in leading people. So that was one thing. I wanted to make sure that it could speak to a different audience. Second one is, this is slightly more cynical. I became aware through a lot of the leaders I was working with how very little reading people actually do. And when I wrote that, it was really pre-podcast. So, but how are people consuming their information? Well, the people that I'm working with, they may be reading an industry periodical like Modern Healthcare and healthcare example, front page of the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, whatever they were, but they're getting snippets. It's almost like the USA-ification of the information they were getting. They don't read anymore. So I wanted to make it to the point where, you could pick up the book and have a flight and put it down on the seat for the next person that came in after you got off the flight because it was easy to read. And that the format is, because it is a fable with 7 parts, super easy to pick up and all that stuff. The work behind it is that last part of every chapter are some reflection questions. And if you really do that stuff, man, that's a lot of work. Good stuff, but yeah.
That's one of the things I love about it. And I wrote in my copy of it, but when you take something from it's almost theory when you read it.
Yeah.
But then when you sit there and have to answer questions and do the work, like you're saying, you're like, okay, I'm embodying this, physically I'm writing.
Yep.
I'm putting it in the context of my life. It's no longer a really entertaining story that you've told, but now I have to turn inward. I found that to be just so valuable and something I really appreciated. And it makes me one of my favorite books, The Alchemist.
Oh yeah.
It's just a great story.
Yep.
So to hear a great story and have the lesson woven into that is very cool.
By the way, paid political announcement. So for anybody picks up the book, read the intro because it's intended to be 8 chapters. We just called the chapter 1 the intro, and it really sets up the fable and the story that's to follow. But
And that's why that's why it was funny too, because I had picked it up and not finished it, and I'm like, oh well, I'll read the whole thing from the beginning, and I'm like, it was a couple days I was going to see, so I'm like, I'm going to read this thing in 2 days, so I'll just skip the intro. I read the intro after, and then I'm like, okay. I was just looking at like, man, I can't believe you went through this. What a cool experience that story must have been.
Yeah, it was fun. And I'll say also, I wrote that book 3 times before, or 2 other times before that third. It just did not communicate in my voice in a way that I was happy with. And that one seemed it's and if you think about the pacing of it, the calmness, the comfort, the encouragement, not talking at people, encouraging them on a journey, which is what I think developing as a leader is all about. So I wanted it to mirror all of that stuff.
Yeah, try to be so aware of that, because I have guys that are working for me, and whatever influence I have with my clients or anyone in the town is I'm really I really pay attention to the way other people deliver things.
Mm.
I realize it's more the delivery than the message a lot of the
Yeah,
times,
yeah, yeah,
because it can be very intrusive, and then almost a lot of good advice gets thrown out because
for sure.
so I always try to think, how can I articulate this in a way that it gets across, not to manipulate, but just to so that it's approached properly? Because I've just
Oh
been
yeah.
approached with people in the wrong way. And I'm like, man, I I almost want to give that advice a chance because it could be right, but the distaste is too much to.
I love that point. And there's a fundamental belief that I hold that led that book to be written the way it is. I don't like checklists. I don't like being told that there are 10 of this and 5 of this and 14 of this and all of that. The reason the journey metaphor worked was that I'm encouraging people to walk alongside me, and I'm not telling them what they need to do as leaders, but I'm using different examples from nature to ask them questions so that they can dig it out of themselves. And I think it's a much more authentic and sustainable approach. And that's kind of the way I practice. I don't, it's really funny coming over here today. I listen to podcasts and I read Substack a lot. And there was a Substack I should remember from yesterday or the day before. And it was the 3 things every leader needs to know, or the 10 things. Like, really? Every leader? Really? And you're in position to say that? So I have a strong ego like most of us do, but my ego is not that strong for me to pretend that I know what you're going through. Like, I don't know what your 10 answers are. I know what this guy's 10 answers were. So anyway, it's intended to be a very respectful approach. That's kind of how I try and live my life. It's a very respectful approach to helping others be great.
Did you feel like you were almost stepping outside yourself as you're writing this story? Because you're kind of writing, this journey of yourself with this third person. I just would imagine what that would, maybe the concept of that would be a little trippy or just an interesting perspective.
It was different because there are things in there that had taken me kind of years to get close to. Like, the Tale of the Storm is about this hiker and the protagonist and this leader on a journey, and they're up hiking, backpacking, and they encounter a summer storm, and they find shelter, and the storm is beating on the tin roof of their shelter out in the mountains, and so much so that it just kind of clogged their thinking. Well, that had never really occurred to me that way. It took me a long time to really get to understand how distracting noise can be with respect to performance. And I learned that I do a fair amount of pro bono consulting work with Division I athletes and athletic teams. And one team in particular was a gymnastics team that was very, very highly ranked. I think they were 1 in the nation or 2 in the nation at some point. And they went on to win a national championship. But I learned noise through them. I learned how strong noise can be, not just from the outside, but what the leader is putting on the team inadvertently, and how distracting to performance that could be. So anyway, that led to that one chapter. So some of these were was trying to make the story work and trying to simplify it, but the concept of noise or the concept of purpose and source, these are really deep things that take people a long time to get to.
Yeah, that one, I wanted to say, I think that one's probably my favorite chapter.
Mm.
But as I started to think about I was like, well, I really like the one about the house too. So
The
yeah.
house is good.
But there's something about that I
Yeah.
don't know, something really resonated with me in that one.
Cool.
And when we were like backing up, I was thinking about delivery. I was talking with someone on this podcast a little while ago, and we were talking about it was something about David Goggins. I'm sure you know and she was like, I almost, don't really like to bring him up because he can be almost political or very divisive. And I said, this is just my opinion, and I don't know if this is true. I said, I think one of the issues might be is, and this hopefully this ties in right with delivery, but there are some people that might need to really hear his advice because they might just be laying around doing nothing,
Sure.
and they might need to get up and get their act together. And then I think there's some other people that are probably doing way too much, too hard, and they're way too ego driven. And I think his advice in the right context is perfect for certain people.
Sure.
But I think people may get offended because it's not right for them.
Yep.
And I think just back to delivery, it's like, I don't know, you gotta take it all with a grain of salt because
For sure.
it could be perfect for my brother and terrible for me, or vice versa.
When I wrote Leadership in 2011, there were 277,000 books on leadership that had been published. 277,000. Now, multiply that by whatever in the self-publishing era, probably 500,000 books on leadership right now. If there was one answer, we'd have one book.
Yeah.
There's not one answer. There's a lot of different approaches to it. And what's going to resonate with some, you talk about Tale of the Empty House. I happen to love that one because, again, judgment was something that I've struggled with my whole life. And but that didn't resonate for everybody, and they may not be an issue, or it may not be something they're conscious of. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to tell this story.
Yeah, I've experienced the judgment firsthand. Even when me and Kyle started doing the podcast, we had people on, and I didn't know them, and I made some snap judgments, and I got to know them and felt terrible because I'm like, man, I could have just walked right by a potential great relationship and friendship, and because if you make those, you don't even think about them. You see something and you associates with something you've seen in the past, and you've got the whole story written out in your head.
You know why that happens? Because we're people.
Yeah,
we're human beings. And that's what humans naturally do. We try and connect dots because that's our survival. We think in gestalt, we think in patterns. So we see some things that happen. We see that yellow light. We know it's going to turn red. So we see some things come up in an interaction or statements, and we connect dots. Sometimes it's fair and sometimes it's not. So again, the wise, mature leader can catch themselves when they go, oh, crap, I just cost myself a potential relationship or whatever. What is that about me? What had me react to that? And that's the work.
Yeah.
That's the work of self-awareness and impact and stuff. And when leaders do that, they're unstoppable. It's just very cool.
The final chapter, what is your source?
Yeah.
If I ask you that question for yourself,
yep.
Do you feel like you're pretty connected to that?
I am connected and getting more strongly connected. I wouldn't have said this 10 years ago, but my source is really a lot of creative expression and service, those two things. And so I'm writing my second book right now to try and help ease, that's a funny word, the suffering of leaders in this crazy time of collision of human needs in the workplace, industry disruption, environmental disruption, geopolitics, quiet quitting, workforce issues, etc. What's a leader to make of all that stuff? We're not sociologists. So this book is called Honoring, and it's a new approach to how leaders can lean into all of those pieces, again, intended to ease suffering. So My source is using some creative thinking and ideas as a teacher of others in the spirit of service. So everything I do now, I get the great juice from creative expression. I'm finally making progress on my piano lessons. I love music and learning to make music, and I write, and it the common theme is that they are intended to be in service to other people.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any potential release dates for this book?
I don't. I'm working with 2 writers on it, and we had hoped that the first rough cut would be done by the end of this year, and it's not in the place right now I feel comfortable doing that. It said the next 2 months it's going to be done. So I'm going to guess completion like April 1st, and then whatever the time the publication takes, which is usually about 8-10 months.
I imagine it's tough with with how fast things change. Do you want to make a new draft every other week
I know.
because something just got updated?
I
And
know.
I guess at some point you just got to say,
This is it.
yeah, this is
The cake is baked.
yeah.
Yeah, I think at some point, the nice part about the first book was the themes are timeless, so it didn't really matter what was going on. I was using some examples that were contemporaneous for then, that happened to relate to stuff going on in 2010 or 2011. But yeah, the pace of change is so wild and crazy right now that, yeah, at some point I just have to put my, stake in the ground and say, this is it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. It moves fast and everything changes fast.
For sure.
It's I don't know if changing your mind's the right term, but you get more information and then your perspective changes.
I started writing this book 2 years ago, and I started it by interviewing, like we're doing here, between 50 and 60 leaders and or practitioners of people like me, and had so much good data. They weren't always responsive to the question of how we can take a new approach to this challenging time. But I had 60 transcribed, annotated, noted interviews, plus reading book after book after book and article. Like at some point in the last year, I've just been overwhelmed with data. And my challenge has been kind of sitting back and saying, all right, so what sense do you make of all this? My job isn't to just be a reporter of 60 interviews. It's how do you tell the story in a creative way that's going to serve other people?
Are you still doing your practice when you're writing every morning?
Yep. I try to. I wish I was perfect at it, but yeah, still try to.
I'll tell you something. I don't know if this is helpful at all, but I realized this probably mostly thanks to my fiance, but certain things I would do like that or variations. And I was really on my case about, doing it every day in streaks.
Yep.
And I realized it got to the point where I became the slave of the habit. And I realized that I can say, I'm going to shoot for 4 days this week. And my well-being has, because it's not this, what's the streak from now till death? Is that what I'm going for? Because things are going to come up, and I believe in discipline and working hard, but I think that it's when it starts running your life, it's no longer improving. And that's what I realized.
Part of the challenge of motivation, which has been a subject of every leadership conversation in class forever, motivation. When we can help shift the have to get to, that's it. Yeah. You get to write 4 days a week or 3 days a week or 2 days a week or whenever it is, versus I have to write 7 days a week or I'm a failure or I'm not living up my full purpose. No, I get to write. So yeah, it's freeing, isn't it?
I try to use that exact phrase for things I don't want to do. I'm like, I get to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can play a trick on myself.
That's right.
As far as around here in Bozeman, I know there's different stuff you're involved with, and you like to be part of the community. What are you up to these days around here?
The thing that excites me there are actually 2. One is of service and one is just enjoyment. The one of service is Montana State has a wonderful program called the Hilleman Scholars Program. And it is giving educational opportunities for first generation college students coming from small towns all over the state that might not have had the opportunity to have the same SAT prep courses and get those kind of scores. But they, got up at 4 a.m. and they took care of their ranch chores and then went to school and did their athletics, whatever they were. They wouldn't necessarily compare with the admission requirements of kids that came from non-rural, larger schools. And so they give these kids, they find them and then give them an opportunity to learn how to college and learn how to live away from home. And my wife and I are involved in that a little bit and really enjoy that. And these incredible college students have a better performance rate and retention rate. They graduate at a higher level than the average freshman coming into MSU, which I'm thrilled by. And we get to interact with them once or twice a year and their mentors, and really terrific. So the Hilleman Scholars Program, if anybody wants to donate to MSU Hilleman Scholars, please do. And then the other thing is I love music. Music's always been wonderful influence in my life, from kind of studying the poetry of lyrics in the 60s and 70s, incredible songwriters, to now we try and attend every live music thing we can within reason.
I was going to say, you must be pretty exhausted.
Really busy. But we started oddly on the kind of classical side. So we're very involved now with the Bozeman Symphony, Montana Chamber Society, that, and then all the other kinds of, cool acts coming through here and stuff. But between music and Hilleman Scholars, those are the things that are firing me up the most.
Yeah, I learned about Hilleman's a couple of years ago. A client actually invited me to their dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually hit really close to home for me because I grew up on a farm, and just given the logistics of my upbringing, my father passed away when I was young. I realized there wasn't a time in my life till I was in my mid-20s that I thought about going to college or even thought of it being a possibility. And it made me really be able to relate to these kids, because when you're just farming every day and you're that's your laid out destiny.
Yep.
You don't even, and I think it might be a little bit different now, kind of with our access to technology, but it might not be financially feasible, but it might not just be even something you can imagine and think you can even comprehend yourself being there. So I think it's very cool if they do that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do think it's not part of your identity story that I'm going to go to college.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see these very brilliant, interesting young people.
Yeah, very cool. If you want to find your book or find you, where's the best place to do that?
Book on Amazon. You can find me at Foster Mobley on every social platform. And then Stepwise, my podcast is available on every form of publication, Spotify and Apple and all of those kinds of things.
And you've got the layout for that is it's different leaders that you're interviewing and talking to.
Yeah, we're starting season 3, and I've interviewed some of the most iconic and interesting leaders that I could find. Many of whom I've worked with, some of whom I've not. They range from Jeff Immelt, the former CEO and chairman of General Electric, voted 3 different times the most effective or the best CEO in the world by a bunch of financial publications, all the way down to college coaches and business leaders and Army generals and stuff like that. And I want to get each of their takes on how you manage this crazy time of collision and disruption.
Yeah. And I've listened to a handful of them, and I very highly recommend.
Cool.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to be able to sit with you and
excellent.
Steal some of your time.
Oh, always. Oh, Tim, always fun.
Yeah. Well, I'll wrap it up here, and I'll put everything in the description so people can find you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Foster.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks for listening, folks. You can find the full blog post for every episode, along with key takeaways and links, at mountain-mule.com. If you haven't yet, consider following the show. That one small action helps these Montana businesses get seen, grow, and thrive, and it helps this podcast keep going too. If you know a business that would be a good fit for the show, we'd love to hear from you. Just reach out through the website or social. Thank you for supporting these Montana businesses. See you on the next show.